It's been called one of the most disturbing masterpieces in American cinema, a film that captured the decaying heart of 1970s New York and introduced audiences to perhaps the most complex anti-hero ever portrayed on screen. A psychological thriller so controversial that its violence may have inspired a real-life assassination attempt, Taxi Driver. For millions of movie lovers, this unflinching journey into urban isolation ranks as Martin Scorsese's defining achievement. But what if I told you that beneath its familiar surface lies a world of secrets that even the most dedicated fans have never uncovered? Today we're pulling back the curtain on Taxi Driver's most closely guarded mysteries, revelations straight from the cast and crew who brought this haunting story to life. The hidden meanings, the on-set tensions, the symbolic details placed throughout the film that completely transform how you understand Travis Bickle's descent into violence. These aren't casual trivia facts. These are the profound insights that the actors themselves have revealed over the years. From Robert De Niro's shocking immersion methods to Jodie Foster's surprising confessions about her iconic child worker role to the alternate endings that would have given the film an entirely different meaning. This is the untold story of Taxi Driver, and I promise you this, by the time we're done, you'll never see Taxi Driver the same way again. The film that almost wasn't. Before we dive into the cast's revelations, we need to understand something remarkable. Taxi Driver almost never made it to theaters at all. When screenwriter Paul Schrader first completed the script, it was considered too dark, too risky, and too uncommercial by virtually every studio in Hollywood. The screenplay sat untouched for years before finding its way to Martin Scorsese. The script was rejected over 20 times, Schrader revealed in a retrospective interview. Studio executives would read it and say, "This is brilliant, but we can't make it." They were terrified of its political implications and psychological darkness. What few people realize is just how personal this screenplay was for Schrader. "I wrote Taxi Driver during the lowest point in my life," Schrader confessed. "I had broken up with my girlfriend, I was sleeping on people's couches, I had an ulcer, and I was drinking heavily. I hadn't spoken to anyone in weeks when I checked into a hospital. The character of Travis came directly from my own isolation." This origin story reveals something profound about the film's authenticity. Travis Bickle wasn't simply a fictional creation, he was born from genuine despair. The film faced another major obstacle: financing. Even with Scorsese attached to direct and the rising star Robert De Niro committed to the lead role, studios remained hesitant to back such a potentially controversial project. Salvation came from an unexpected source. Columbia Pictures finally agreed to finance the film, but only with a rock-bottom budget of $1.3 million, producer Michael Phillips revealed, and only after we agreed to a completion bond that would trigger if the film went over budget or if Scorsese didn't deliver it on schedule. This financial constraint forced creative compromises that would actually enhance the film. The limited budget meant shooting quickly on actual New York streets rather than constructed sets, giving the film its documentary-like authenticity. The gritty, sometimes imperfect cinematography wasn't just an artistic choice, it was a necessity born of limited resources. Even with financing secured, the production faced one last obstacle. The film's graphic violence threatened an X rating, which would have severely limited its distribution. The climactic shootout sequence was originally even more graphic. We had to desaturate the colors in the final shootout scene to mute the impact of the blood, editor Marcia Lucas disclosed years later. Martin didn't want to cut a frame of the violence. He felt it was essential to Travis's character arc, so we literally drained some of the color from the sequence to secure an R rating. This compromise created one of cinema's most effective stylistic choices. The slightly faded, dreamlike quality of the final bloodbath added a surreal dimension that enhanced the film's psychological complexity. These struggles to bring Taxi Driver to the screen reveal something essential about its power. Like its protagonist, the film itself was an outsider, unwelcome in the mainstream, forced to fight for its very existence. This troubled beginning infused the project with an authenticity and urgency that helps explain its lasting impact. The real Travis Bickle, De Niro's shocking methods. Robert De Niro's portrayal of Travis Bickle is considered one of the greatest acting performances in cinema history, but what most fans don't realize is the extraordinary lengths De Niro went to in order to inhabit this disturbed character, methods so extreme they would transform how actors approach challenging roles. Before filming began, De Niro did something unprecedented. He actually obtained a taxi driver's license and spent weeks driving a cab through New York City's most dangerous neighborhoods. "I worked 12-hour shifts for a month," De Niro revealed years later. "Most passengers had no idea who I was. I needed to understand what it felt like to be invisible in a city full of people, to be surrounded by life but separated from it by the barrier of a taxicab." This immersion went far beyond mere research. During this period, De Niro kept a diary in Travis's voice, recording observations and thoughts that informed his performance. Pages from this diary became the film's haunting voiceover narration, including the famous "All the animals come out at night" monologue.
All the animals come out at night.
What audiences hear isn't just acting, it's the actual record of De Niro's psychological journey into Travis's mindset. Scorsese described being disturbed by the transformation he witnessed. "There were days when Bob would come to set and I wouldn't recognize him," the director recalled. "Not physically, but something in his eyes had changed. He wasn't Bob anymore. He was Travis. It was unsettling." This transformation extended to De Niro's physical preparation. Few people know that De Niro deliberately lost 35 pounds to play Travis, giving him the gaunt, hungry look of someone living on the margins. He then immediately began training with military advisors to build the wiry, hardened physique of a Vietnam veteran, a physical transformation that mirrors Travis's own evolution from isolated loner to self-styled avenging soldier. Co-star Jodie Foster reported being genuinely frightened by De Niro during certain scenes. "There were moments when I wasn't sure if I was acting with Robert or with Travis," she admitted. He stayed in character between takes, muttering to himself, pacing like a caged animal. It wasn't an act, he had actually become this other person. Perhaps most disturbingly, De Niro insisted on wearing Travis's actual clothes for weeks before filming, sleeping in them, sweating in them, living in them day and night. By the time cameras rolled, the costumes weren't costumes anymore, they were extensions of the character, molded to De Niro's body, carrying the actual grime and smell of Travis's isolated existence. Method acting existed before De Niro, but what he did on Taxi Driver took it to another level, observed acting coach Harold Guskin. He wasn't pretending to be Travis Bickle. For those months, at some fundamental level, he was Travis Bickle. That's what makes the performance so unsettling. It's not acting in the conventional sense. It's a kind of temporary possession. This total immersion had consequences. De Niro has spoken about the difficulty of extracting himself from the role after filming concluded. "Travis stayed with me for months," he admitted in a rare moment of personal disclosure. "I'd find myself looking at people on the street the way he would, judging them through his eyes. It was difficult to let him go completely." De Niro's approach to Travis Bickle would influence generations of actors, establishing a new standard for psychological commitment to a role. But it also serves as a cautionary tale about the potential costs of such deep immersion into a disturbed character's psyche. Jodie Foster, the child in the storm. Perhaps the most controversial aspect of Taxi Driver was the casting of 12-year-old Jodie Foster as child worker Iris. The decision to place a real child in such disturbing scenes raised serious ethical questions that the production struggled to navigate. What few people realize is that Foster wasn't the first choice for the role. The part was originally offered to Melanie Griffith, who at 17 was closer to the character's age in the script. Griffith's mother, actress Tippi Hedren, forbade her from taking the role, concerned about its potential psychological impact. When Foster was cast instead, extraordinary precautions had to be taken. "I was never actually on set during the more disturbing scenes," revealed Scorsese. "We had a female assistant director handle those days. I would set up the shots and then leave, communicating by walkie-talkie from another room. It felt like the responsible way to handle such sensitive material with a child performer." Most viewers don't know that Foster underwent extensive psychological evaluations before and during filming. Child psychologists monitored her reactions to the material and provided regular counseling to ensure the role wasn't causing any harm. Foster herself has spoken about the unusual experience with remarkable perspective. "I knew I was acting," she explained years later. "The irony is that the scenes that disturbed adult viewers most weren't disturbing to me at all. I was a professional actor from the age of 3. I understood the difference between performance and reality." What's particularly fascinating is that Foster was never allowed to see the completed film until years later. "My mother and the producers agreed that I shouldn't watch Taxi Driver until I was older," Foster revealed. "I finally saw it when I was about 18, and I was shocked, not by my scenes, but by how dark the entire film was. As a child performer, I only experienced my sections of the story." Foster's mother, Brandy Foster, was present for every moment of filming, reviewing each scene and dialogue exchange. She insisted on script changes when she felt certain lines crossed boundaries. "My mother was my protector," Foster acknowledged. "She made sure I understood the character without being exposed to concepts that weren't age-appropriate." The relationship between Foster and De Niro on set was carefully managed. Contrary to what many assume, De Niro didn't stay in his intense Travis persona when working with Foster. "Between takes, Bob was remarkably gentle with me," Foster recalled. "He would completely break character and become this warm, protective presence. Then when the cameras rolled, he would transform back into Travis." Watching that switch flip was actually my first real acting lesson, seeing how completely someone could transform themselves. This careful handling of Foster's involvement didn't just protect the young actor, it added an unexpected dimension to the film. The very real innocence Foster brought to Iris created a powerful contrast with the film's otherwise unrelenting darkness. Her presence in the story functioned as both a symbol of what Travis believes he's saving and a reminder of what's at stake in his increasingly unhinged quest for purpose. Foster's performance earned her first Academy Award nomination at age 14, launching one of the most respected acting careers in Hollywood history. Yet she has acknowledged the role's complexity in shaping her life. Taxi Driver marked me, not in a negative way, but it definitely shaped how I approach characters. I learned at a very young age that acting isn't just pretending, it's about finding emotional truth in even the most extreme circumstances. The New York that no longer exists. One of Taxi Driver's most remarkable achievements is its documentation of a New York City that has completely vanished, a decaying, dangerous metropolis that bears little resemblance to today's gentrified Manhattan. What many viewers don't realize is that this wasn't just set decoration. The production captured a genuine historical moment in the city's evolution. "We didn't need to build sets," explained production designer Mel Bourne. "The New York of 1975 was Travis Bickle's New York. Times Square was genuinely filled with adult theaters, prostitutes, and drug dealers. The garbage strikes meant piles of trash lined the streets. The city was nearly bankrupt. What you see in the film isn't production design, it's documentary." This authenticity extended to the filming approach. Scorsese insisted on shooting on location, often guerrilla style without proper permits, capturing the actual texture of the streets. Many scenes were filmed with hidden cameras, revealed cinematographer Michael Chapman. The sequence where Travis drives through Times Square observing the street life was shot with a camera concealed in the back of the taxi. Those aren't extras, they're actual pimps, prostitutes, and hustlers unaware they were being filmed. The film's most famous line emerged from this immersion in the real city. "The you talking to me?" scene wasn't in the script, Scorsese admitted.
You talking to me? You talking to me?
Bob improvised that entire mirror sequence, drawing on actual confrontations he'd witnessed while driving his cab around the city. That's not Travis Bickle speaking. That's the raw voice of 1970s New York that De Niro had absorbed during his preparation. The production's authentic approach sometimes put the cast and crew in genuine danger. During night shoots in the East Village and Harlem, the filmmakers faced harassment and threats from local gangs. Rather than retreat to safer locations, Scorsese incorporated these tensions into the film. "We hired actual street people as extras and security," recalled assistant director Fred Schuler. "Some scenes have real gang members in the background. There's a nervous energy to the film that comes from knowing we were always one wrong move away from real trouble." The film's famous tracking shot across a row of prostitutes includes women who were actually working those streets, not professional actresses. Their expressions of suspicion and hostility toward the camera weren't acting. They were authentic reactions to the intrusion of filmmakers into their territory. Even the climactic shootout was influenced by the real environment. The building where Travis's rampage takes place was an actual tenement known for prostitution and drug dealing. The production was able to use the location because it had been partially abandoned after a fire, another authentic detail of a city in decline. Weather played an unexpected role in creating the film's atmosphere. The summer of 1975 was one of the hottest on record in New York, with temperatures regularly exceeding 100 degrees. This punishing heat is visible on screen in the sheen of sweat on actors' faces and the lethargy of background extras. You can feel the heat radiating from the screen, noted film historian David Thompson. That oppressive atmosphere isn't created through lighting or filters. It's the actual suffocating summer of a city at its lowest point. The heat becomes another character in the film, pushing everyone closer to their breaking point. This documentary quality gives Taxi Driver a historical significance beyond its artistic merits. It preserves a moment in New York's evolution that has been completely erased by gentrification and redevelopment. Times Square, now a sanitized tourist attraction filled with chain stores and family entertainment, exists in Taxi Driver as it truly was, a seedy, dangerous crossroads that embodied urban decay. When I watch the film now, reflected Scorsese, I'm struck by how completely that world has vanished. We weren't just telling Travis's story, we were capturing the end of a particular chapter in New York's history. The city Travis drives through doesn't exist anymore except in this film. The hidden meanings most fans never catch. Taxi Driver is layered with visual symbolism that most viewers, even devoted fans, completely miss on their first several viewings. The cast and crew have revealed some of these hidden meanings in interviews over the years, transforming how we understand key scenes. Perhaps the most significant symbolic pattern involves the color red, which appears with increasing frequency as the film progresses toward its violent climax. The color red wasn't just a stylistic choice, explained costume designer Ruth Morley. It represents Travis's growing bloodlust and violent impulses. Notice how red elements multiply in the frame as his mental state deteriorates, from small touches like his diary cover to entire scenes bathed in red light. This color progression is so subtle that most viewers register it only subconsciously. The famous scene where Travis calls Betsy after their disastrous date takes place in a hallway bathed in red light, a visual cue that his rejection is pushing him toward violence. By the film's bloody conclusion, red dominates the palette entirely. Mirrors play a crucial symbolic role throughout the film, reflecting Travis's fractured identity and self-obsession. We deliberately placed mirrors in nearly every scene with Travis, revealed set decorator Herbert Mulligan. Sometimes obviously, like in the famous "You Talking to Me" sequence, but often hidden in the background or edges of the frame. Travis is constantly confronted with his own image but never truly sees himself clearly. Water imagery contains hidden meaning as well. Notice how often rain appears in pivotal scenes. Travis's first meeting with Betsy, his rejection at the campaign office, his conversations with Wizard. This isn't just atmospheric, it's symbolic. Rain in the film represents a cleansing that never actually happens, Scorsese explained years later. Travis talks about a real rain washing the streets clean, but the actual rain in the film never washes anything away. The city remains dirty, and Travis remains disturbed. It's a visual counterpoint to his failed quest for purification. The film's famous overhead shot after the climactic shootout contains symbolism most viewers miss entirely. As the camera slowly pans across the carnage, it moves in a spiral pattern, mimicking Travis's psychological descent throughout the story. That wasn't just a stylistic flourish, revealed camera operator Fred Schuler. Martin specifically wanted a spiraling movement to visually represent Travis coming to the end of his downward spiral. It's the visual culmination of a pattern established throughout the film. Hands serve as a recurring motif with specific meaning. Travis's hands are frequently shown in close-up, counting money, writing in his diary, cleaning his guns, clenching into fists. These shots aren't random. Travis feels powerless, and his hands represent his attempt to regain control, explained Scorsese. The progression from writing to preparing weapons to violence shows his movement from thought to action. It's a visual storytelling element that tracks his evolution. Food appears throughout the film as a symbol of Travis's alienation. His strange eating habits, mixing brandy with peach schnapps, pouring table sugar into cheap wine, reveal his disconnection from normal social behavior. Those food choices weren't random, De Niro revealed. I studied people with certain psychological disorders and noticed they often have unusual eating habits. Travis puts sugar in his drinks because he's trying to make something bitter taste sweet, just as he's trying to find something sweet in his bitter existence. Perhaps most fascinating is the film's use of subjective camera techniques to place viewers inside Travis's distorted perception. Notice how certain scenes feature slow motion effects or unusual focus, particularly when Travis is watching couples from his taxi. We wanted to visually represent how Travis sees the world differently than normal people, explained cinematographer Michael Chapman. The slow motion shots of couples together, slightly out of focus, communicate his alienation and longing. We're seeing through Travis's eyes in those moments. These carefully constructed visual elements give Taxi Driver a depth that purely plot-driven films lack. They create a subtext that viewers feel without necessarily seeing, contributing to the film's lasting power and influence. When rewatched with awareness of these symbolic layers, what might seem like a straightforward character study reveals itself as a much more complex artistic statement. The ending, reality or fantasy? Perhaps the most debated aspect of Taxi Driver is its conclusion, where Travis, after committing a brutal triple murder, is hailed as a hero, recovers from his wounds, and returns to taxi driving, even briefly reuniting with Betsy. This seemingly happy ending has puzzled viewers for decades, leading to one of cinema's most persistent questions. Is the ending real, or is it Travis's dying fantasy? The cast and crew have offered contradictory answers over the years, suggesting the ambiguity was intentional. "We wanted that question to linger," Scorsese admitted in a 2016 interview. "Notice the stylistic shift in those final scenes. Everything becomes too neat, too convenient. Travis's hair is suddenly regrown, the newspaper clippings seem exaggerated, Betsy's interest in him feels unearned. There are deliberate cues suggesting something isn't quite right." Paul Schrader, who wrote the screenplay, offered a more definitive interpretation. "The epilogue is not meant to be a realistic sequence. How could this man, who has committed these horrible acts, simply go back to his job and be celebrated? It's either a dying fantasy or a visual representation of the fact that nothing in society has changed. The cycle continues." Several subtle details support the fantasy interpretation. The overhead shot that concludes the shootout resembles classic depictions of souls departing bodies. As the camera rises, Travis appears to stop moving. The gentle Bernard Herrmann music that accompanies the epilogue contrasts sharply with the jazz-influenced score of the rest of the film, suggesting a tonal shift from reality to fantasy. De Niro himself has acknowledged the intentional ambiguity. "We discussed whether those final scenes were happening in Travis's mind as he was dying. I played them with a slightly different quality, a bit mechanical, a bit too perfect. There's something not quite authentic about Travis in those moments." The taxi mirror check that concludes the film provides another clue. Travis's disturbed glance at his own reflection suggests his violent impulses remain unresolved. If the ending is real, this moment implies Travis will likely spiral into violence again. If it's a fantasy, it's a crack in the facade of his imagined redemption. Jodie Foster offered perhaps the most insightful analysis. Whether the ending is real or fantasy isn't actually the important question. What matters is that either way, nothing has been resolved. If it's real, society has perversely celebrated violence, and Travis has learned nothing. If it's a fantasy, then Travis died without achieving any real connection or understanding. Both interpretations are equally disturbing. This ambiguity elevates Taxi Driver above simple character study or urban thriller. It forces viewers to actively engage with the film's themes rather than passively consume its story. The ongoing debate about the ending ensures that Travis Bickle's journey continues to provoke thought and discussion nearly 5 decades after the film's release. "Great films don't answer questions, they ask them," Scorsese reflected. "I've never wanted to definitively state whether those final scenes are real or fantasy. That uncertainty is part of the film's power. Each viewer must wrestle with that question for themselves." Conclusion. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the secrets behind Taxi Driver. From the film's troubled beginning to its profound cultural impact, from De Niro's extraordinary immersion methods to the hidden symbols woven throughout, these revelations give us a new appreciation for this landmark film. Robert De Niro's Travis Bickle remains one of cinema's most unforgettable characters. Complex, disturbing, and impossible to simplify. What began as a personal screenplay born from Schrader's depression evolved into something far more significant, a cultural touchstone that continues to provoke thought and debate nearly half a century after its release. The film's journey, from rejected script to enduring masterpiece, reminds us that sometimes the most difficult artistic visions are the ones that endure. Taxi Driver refuses easy categorization or comfortable conclusions. It challenges us to look unflinchingly at urban alienation, failed connection, and the thin line between righteous indignation and disturbed violence. If you enjoyed this exploration of Taxi Driver's hidden history, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into classic Hollywood films. We're dedicated to uncovering the stories behind the movies that shaped our culture and continue to influence filmmaking today. Drop a comment below telling us your favorite Taxi Driver moment or sharing any other behind-the-scenes facts you might know. Next up, we're tackling another controversial masterpiece from the 1970s. And trust us, you won't believe what the studio executives tried to remove before its release. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.